Hello and welcome to our webinar on optimizing data systems, enhancing client satisfaction, and maximizing profitability with OnePlan. Please explore our YouTube channel for more content like this and visit our website to learn about upcoming webinars.
I'm going to start out kind of maybe a little bit to one side, or at least make it seems like it might be to one side, but we're going to talk about donuts for a minute. And I do this because I like to point out that the problems we're going to deal with and the solutions that we're looking for are in fact actually usually very straightforward and very simple. We're going to show a lot of features during this presentation and during this demo, and this is going to become a cloudy topic again. But in the end, when we are talking about people and the hours that they can supply to your organization, or that they can be sold externally, it doesn't really make any difference. They are actually very similar to an inventory of donuts, and here's what I mean. At the start of the day, you order 120 donuts, you only sell 60 donuts, you will be losing money unless you've overpriced the donuts. If at the start of the day you order 120 donuts and you sell all of your 120 donuts, you probably left some money on the table, because there were probably people who showed up and wished that they could buy a donut and couldn't. Hours in professional services or in any kind of services organization are exactly the same way. People show up at the start of the day, they have 8 hours to give to an effort or to a client or to charge for. At the end of the day, if they've used less than 8 hours, then that time has been wasted. There's no way to recover it. It's a stale donut. On the other hand, if at the end of the day they've spent 10 hours, you are probably understaffed, and sooner or later you will be disappointing your clients. Again, this is very, very straightforward, and I call this out because a lot of times, and I'm going to be guilty of this, hours are an inventory. They are an inventory that should be cleared at the end of every day. Ideally, perfectly, you will have exactly the number of hours you need and no more than the number of hours you need. However, that will not be possible. You will always have an overage or an underage. And in the end, this is all important, because when it comes to justifying the purchase of a system to more efficiently use hours, in other words, to control the inventory of hours that you are using, the first place to look for justifying it is saying, wow, if we actually sold one more donut a day, this is what the price would amount. This is how much more money we would earn. And look, we have the donut in the counter. Why isn't it going out the door? It is the exact same thing with hours. I have a person who has 8 hours available. They only use 4. If that needle can be moved to 4.5, most of the times the cost justification for purchasing a system will immediately pay for itself. We can talk about this, and we can talk about the subtleties of this if anybody has any questions or wants to circle back to it. But in the end, and I'll keep reiterating this despite all the complexity we'll introduce, really is a very simple process. There's an inventory of hours, and they need to go out the door every single day. One of the things that makes this process more complicated, and of course we recognize that people aren't necessarily selling donuts, is that we have a lot of systems scattered across the organization. Not only a lot of systems, but a lot of organizations. And each one of these systems and their organizations and these different organizations sees their world the way they see their world, through their unique perspective. In most organizations, these all come back together and they get the job done, but how efficiently they do so is really the subject of this webinar. And as you can see, and I'm sure you'll see it reflected in your own organization, this matters not only to consultants selling time to external clients, it matters anywhere you have an organization that must supply services to another organization. So one of the things that OnePlan does, and we'll talk about this repeatedly, is act as a bridge between all of these systems and put things into a certain view and a certain perspective that will enable you and your organization to maximize your utilization of those resources, whether it be for chargeability or simply internal chargebacks. Performance and process maturity are tightly linked. these should be no surprise to anybody. Maybe in terms of the details, they can be. The key to understanding this is the key to understanding why we're presenting this slide is two things. One, that process always plays a role. No purchase of a tool is going to be a magical solution. You are going to need to make the most of it. And OnePlan, by the way, provides consulting services if that's a requirement. But two, and maybe more importantly, these kinds of metrics are used to justify the purchase and the investment in these systems. So if in your unique case, you have a question about projects being delivered on time, let's suppose that you are contracted to make certain deliverables happen. Let's suppose that you are, for example, a clinical research trial organization supplying clinical research trials, and you must meet milestones on time in order to charge for the overall progress of the project. Quantifying that penalty or that ability is key to paying for the system. And instead of talking to people about how great it would be if you had a better product and how better your lives would be, it's always better to root this in numbers and finance. So again, in terms of this particular slide, that's why we're presenting it. Second reason why, but also I hope that if it comes to it and you're actually interested in this, you can circle back with us and say, hey, we'd like some help quantifying our business case for this. OnePlan for services delivery. So the key to understanding how OnePlan plays in this space is the ability OnePlan has to integrate a complex schedule. So you must deliver something, whether it's a bridge, whether it's an implementation of an ERP system, whether it's, again, a clinical research trial. You have a schedule that needs to be maintained and integrated and is you're contractually obligated to do, along with its risks and obligations, with resource capacity planning, resource utilization maximization, and client success. This OnePlan puts you, the client, in a position where you can both maximize your resource utilization because you either need to charge back for it or you need to bill for it on a time and materials basis, alongside your ability to deliver against your larger project, which you may be billing for in a completely different way. OnePlan does this by providing AI-enhanced operational excellence, project financials. How is this particular project doing on a time and materials and basis? Seamless integration with systems that you probably already have in place. With scalability and adaptability, we understand that situations change. You may have sold new contracts, you may have acquired new commitments, you will need to make substitutions. And again, ultimately, as we said, this quality of your service and your performance against whatever your contract was. And we're using the word contract, but it could be anything. Again, it could be an internal commitment, or it could be a formal external commitment. All right. So a traditional PSA, unlike OnePlan, operates from project sales, project planning, resource utilization, team collaboration, time and expense, project accounting intelligence. That's great. OnePlan supports all of these things, but OnePlan takes a different approach. We are actually, and we'll talk about this and demonstrate this, we are actually in the business of improving visibility of planning within the sales process itself, with making the handoff of project estimation, making the handoff of the project from sales to delivery seamless, because it will have ultimately been built by delivery to begin with. Maybe very interestingly, maybe not, supporting multiple methodologies for project delivery. If you're in an environment where there are multiple methodologies, and most companies are, it's important to know that OnePlan supports multiple methods. Integrating the use of multiple tools and solutions. Again, this will be a familiar theme. Scenario modeling to manage a dynamic environment. This may be to some another key. We are typically in an environment where we have more demand on our resources than what we have, than we're able to supply. Scenario modeling puts us in a position where instead of simply arguing that our people are overworked, we're actually able to quantify and demonstrate that we should be hiring, for example. And in particular, it allows us in many cases to look ahead and see if we sign a particular contract, what the likely impact is on our services organization. AI tools to ensure data is complete and accurate, and predictive analytics and decision support. This last item sometimes gets lost in boilerplate language, but honestly, all of these planning systems, including OnePlan, are in the business not only of predicting the future, but of making the future happen. And I think people lose sight of this, buried under some business terminology, but it really is that straightforward. When you make a plan, you are saying what you think the future would be like, and when you tend to work that plan, you are attempting to make the future be what you want it to be. And that's what OnePlan supports. So integrated services delivery, OnePlan is actually oftentimes, and our expectation is that it sits in between CRM and a financial system. And you might ask, why is this sitting in between? And what we find, again, is that our clients actually have this immense need for optimizing services and hours spent one way or the other. And that in between these two systems, which are not going anywhere in most organizations, there is a need for this system, in this case OnePlan, that brings everything all together without forcing people to make a huge number of changes and without there being this immense adoption curve. I'm going to talk a little bit, and this is where we really start to complicate the donut story. Organizations often mistake one system of record with one valid way of doing things. OnePlan, the product, does not force this. OnePlan recognizes that in any given organization, you really may have 3 different ways of attempting to plan and shape the future. Scheduling, both Agile and Waterfall. We'll show both of these things in the demo and in some slides as well, but it's important to understand that this is one way that people attempt to plan. The second way is resource capacity planning. The big difference between the schedule, which is project and outcome specific, and resource capacity planning is that resource capacity planning is resource centric. So you are most concerned with saturating and utilizing your resources. Project dates and or deliverables may be the secondary concern. And finally, there's financial. Again, OnePlan supports this as well. This approach starts with money that can be spent, money that must be spent, revenue that must be generated. It may or may not overlap with resource capacity planning and scheduling. All 3, the important thing is, all 3 are valid and all 3 are supported as first-class citizens within OnePlan. It is a process question as to which one becomes the primary in your organization. In most organizations who are pure consulting organizations, for example, resource capacity planning is everything. Think about law firms and accounting firms. In organizations that are actually in the business of selling contracts with a large delivery and a time and materials piece, scheduling and resource capacity planning must work together. And in other organizations, still the planning just then starts with financials. Either way, my point and what I really want to make sure the takeaway from this slide is that OnePlan supports all of these as first-class citizens. So what does this mean? To start with, creating a proposed schedule, and we will show how this can be kind of layered into your current work in the demo. OnePlan allows you to lay down a schedule in a classic sense, and then use that to go back as a proposal as part of your sales proposal, your fully integrated sales proposal. I think this is pretty obvious. A lot of companies do this ad hoc. What OnePlan would bring to the table is a way to make this method or make this process consistent and reusable. So you are actually able to harvest best practices going forward as you make additional proposals. Create resource estimates. So again, to the point of there being first class and second class planning, but there not being a difference in raw validity, instead of starting with a proposal based on a project schedule, your organization may start with a proposal based on your resources that you have available and what you need to use. Again, this may sound strange, but in a lot of organizations, blocks of hours are sold. I need to sell people for 3 months. I need to sell people for 6 months, whatever else it is. And the project schedule comes after the fact, once the people are assigned. Again, both are valid and both supported in OnePlan. You're able to then, of course, model future resource needs against plans. And this is where we start to be able to see the two in conjunction. We'll come back and talk about that a little bit further. Analyze and forecast the cost models. So in an organization that cares about revenue being generated by billable resources, and again, that revenue may be from chargebacks or it could be from a time and materials invoice. It really doesn't matter as far as OnePlan is concerned. What you want to be able to model is both the cost of supplying these resources and the potential revenue targets. This may enable you to prioritize various contracts. You may be in a situation where you can't prioritize anything and you simply have to do every contract sold. Either way, you're able to match up your cost with your actual likely revenue generated. One version of the truth. This speaks to what we were saying earlier, which is if you have a services component or you're entirely services and services has provided you with estimates as part of your sales proposal, there's no longer a question of where it originated and what it becomes as part of the OnePlan process. It will automatically become, if that makes sense, it will automatically become your actual project delivery schedule. We've talked a lot about OnePlan scheduling. It's important for us to emphasize that while OnePlan provides a robust scheduling mechanism, in fact, we integrate with Project for the Web, Planner, Smartsheet, Project Professional. Anything that you are currently using is available. Well, I shouldn't say anything, but likely anything you're currently using is available as a source for scheduling in OnePlan and is integrated out of the box. Delivery using a hybrid model. We are seeing this more and more in many organizations. It tends to typify organizations that are delivering internally rather than externally, but it doesn't make a difference in the end. What we see are a waterfall and agile approach combined. That is, within each stage of a waterfall schedule, you will have an iteration cycle. OnePlan supports this method as well. Should be no surprise at this point. And in the end, what you get in many ways are the benefits of both. You have an agile environment that can be run by the Scrum teams, and you have a waterfall plan that you can report to your senior executives saying, yes, this project will be done by this time. And again, in a services organization that sells a deliverable, that again, basic example is a bridge. There is a huge pool of stakeholders that expect this deliverable, the bridge, to be done at a certain time according to certain milestones. That doesn't mean that each individual team that is billing on a time and materials basis has to use a waterfall schedule in order to get this done. We will demonstrate this inside the tool itself. And this of course can get complex, but this shows what this could look like with your sprints running alongside your actual project plan. Each organization is going to be different and unique in this, and OnePlan supports that configurability. The key, of course, again, being that anywhere you need to apply Agile sensibly, you are able to do so, and you are able to combine it with the other three or the other planning mechanisms, resource capacity planning. And again, in terms of Agile, just like with project scheduling, you are able to leverage Azure DevOps and Jira if you already have those in place. Surfacing information, key information to the team. We're going to demonstrate this at length, but you can get anything out of OnePlan that you put in, plus more. This being the year 2024, of course, OnePlan has an integration with ChatGPT called Sophia. We are able to do the things that you would expect to do in terms of having a chatbot on the page. We ask it questions. Sophia will answer based on our own internal documents as well as the interweb. This can be configured to honor whatever privacy restrictions you have, but it works just as miraculously as ChatGPT does. OnePlan integrations out of the box. Should be no surprise. Out of the box, we integrate with a ton of the products you might have. If we're not going to really talk much about how the integration works, but it is completely user configurable, including data field mapping, business rules, workflow scheduling, logging, and extensible and flexible. The key here being that your IT department isn't going to have to do it itself. You will be able to configure this. You will be able to maintain it yourself if that's what you choose, and move on from there. Fused UI is one of the key strengths of OnePlan. You can expect to see OnePlan not only standalone, but inside the environment that people are working in. This, again, I want to emphasize this. You have a sales team that is working in Dynamics or Power Apps. They will be able to work with OnePlan inside that, including automation. Same thing goes for Teams. Same thing goes for Azure DevOps. Same thing goes for Salesforce. So in any case, you should be thinking in terms of a fused AI approach, if that makes sense to you, that will then enable your users to lower their adoption risk and instead stay where they are, but get the information that they need. So no real surprise in terms of Salesforce, create opportunities, sales and tracking, quotes and timelines, down to resource capacity and scenario modeling, then over to the active engagement and back up into Salesforce. Again, I use Salesforce as an example. The same thing can work similarly with Dynamics CRM or any other particular sales tool that you have. These are just examples of how this could work. And I hope that the takeaway from this is the notion that, again, this is a fused experience and OnePlan sits in a spot where you can focus on what you need to with it and otherwise not have to make significant changes. All right, we're going to switch to the demo. I'm sure everybody's been waiting for that. So this is OnePlan. I'm going to talk about this let me say this. I'm going to gloss over certain things that you're certainly going to wish that you could ask questions about. You should circle back with me and say, I would love it if you could spend 10 minutes kind of walking through this particular item. Anytime that you can provide a set of questions that are of interest to you, I'm more than happy to answer these things. And again, available to you is a custom demo, if that's what you would like. I'm happy to get on and schedule that, and then this could be completely interactive. Or you could have a free trial, or we can refer you to one of the many videos we have that work on certain, or that show certain features. So you've got a lot of options to learn more if I gloss over something, and I certainly will. The basic OnePlan interface, as you can see, we have some featured navigation down the side. We'll go over each one of these. Across the top, we have our ability to create new items. Plan type, kind of a core piece of OnePlan itself. This is configurable, so a plan type can be anything, quite honestly. In this case, we have it's built around an account hierarchy, including accounts, projects, opportunities, operations, and support. But there's no functional limit to this, and you certainly are not stuck with an account-centric approach. Basic navigation around trees, group by, again, completely configurable. You can see we've got a long list here. We're not going to go through any of this, but you can not only get out of the box group by, but you can configure what you need. Selecting columns, filtering, row height plan. We will go down and talk about these widgets in a little bit, so we'll circle back on that. Across the top, you have what may be of interest, what we call lists. These are, again, configurable views. You happen to be looking at the account summary in this case. You can see it over here. But we have many different kinds of views. And again, these are all configurable depending on what you need. We have board views, which we will talk about in a bit again as well, but this should be unsurprising in terms of what it is, and roadmap views as well. The key is in any case with this, when you configure and implement this, you will be in a position to say, I don't need that roadmap stuff. I need to focus on these other things. You can do that, and by role, nobody will have to look at the roadmap. We'll talk about dashboard again in a minute. So across the bottom, and again, these features are common across many of these views, you have a set of details that are built on each one of the plan types. So you can create new plans, you can do a quick edit. I'll show that very quickly. Over here, you can see that you have stages, name, manager, industry, account description. These are all configurable again by account type. So for example, when you have a project, you won't necessarily have the same look or the same stages. You'll have something that's suitable to the project. You can make comments and you can add new items as well. Of course, you're going to be able to drill down. And you can see in this particular example, we have for this account, projects, opportunities, support, and well, in this case, we don't have operations, but we can. Why does this matter if you're looking about services optimization? In the case of selling into an account that already exists, in this case, we'll just assume that it does, you may have 4 opportunities showing. You may want to know not only what that impact is on revenue or likely revenue, you may want to know what that impact is, you probably do, on the potential resource pool you will need to meet these contractual obligations that you're suggesting. All of that stuff is available in one place alongside what you're actually already working on. This is a key point because this puts your organization in a position to be proactive about hiring, or the less happy scenario where you actually have excess staff. But we'll show in a little bit how you can move the staff from one piece to the next. Okay, usually I stop and ask people for questions, so I have this tendency that I'm having to really overcome because I would love to have some questions, but like I said, please make sure you kind of get back to me with any questions you might have. Basics of timesheets, important to everybody. I'm just going to lightly touch on this because I think that they're a pretty bread and butter opportunity for anybody. Table stakes really if you're talking about a services system. But we have a timesheeting system. It does exactly what you think it will. It can copy itself from one week to the next. It can be configured to do weekly time entry, daily time entry, or smaller increments. You can have individual views depending on what you need, and they are all customizable. It has an approval process, a rejection process, and a full audit process. If there's any questions about what timesheets does beyond this, I'm happy to take those after the fact. But I think in general, we can expect timesheets to work exactly like you'd hope they would work. And unless you have some particularly unusual circumstance, the collection of time and the tracking of time does what it's supposed to do. So let's talk for a minute about resource planning. You know what? Actually, what I'm going to do instead of that, let's just to kind of keep the structure of this, I'm going to come down into Contoso, into this project, and just make clear that the basics of scheduling in a waterfall fashion are natively in the system. If you again take a look at the details pane, you'll see if we open quick edit for this item, you can see that this is different because it is a task instead of an account. You're able to comment, etc. And moreover, we're able to look at this if we choose to in terms of a board, so that we can pull things around and plan them in terms of a Kanban board if that's really what we're after. Back to details, back to the work plan and the list view. Alongside this, I want to kind of call our attention to the fact that we have baseline, critical path, timeline. I'm going to click show sprints on this, although I don't think we have particularly good data. But in this case, yeah, we don't. We're able to build sprints alongside this. Like I said earlier, if you want to combine Agile and Waterfall, you're able to do so without any particular problem. We're also, and I think this is of interest to people in organizations with complex schedules where they don't want to have everything land on everybody's timesheet, we're able to show activities that aren't necessarily ever going to be something that somebody's going to want to put time against. So you think about this, you've established a task, it's got 600 hours in it. You want people to bill against that task, but you don't want to have them see things any deeper than that. However, you do still want punch lists that enable you to track what people are doing on these tasks. That's what activities can work for. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I will also finally show the resource plan for this particular project. In this case, we're showing people assigned to this project and what their impact is based on what their time is. You can see that we've got various, you can see that it's highlighted according to the availability and their capacity. This puts you in a position right in the project schedule itself, and I guess this is very important to us, saying that all these things are first-class citizens. You are able to look at resource capacity as you're working on the schedule itself. So your project manager that may be focused on the schedule, or your engagement manager, whereas your engagement manager may be focused on profitability, you have a resource capacity planner that is working on making sure that people are maximally utilized. They're all able to work in the same tool and resolve their differences in one space. Okay. The resource plan itself. Now, what we just talked about was maybe a more scheduling centric view of the world. This is a more resource capacity planning centric view of the world, where you have your entire resource pool able to be seen in one place, and they're not only what they're working on, but where they're over capacity or under capacity, hence needing more work. Across the top, you can see we've got some changes. First of all, we're able to talk about this in terms of scheduled, timesheet time, or committed time, so you've got flexibility there. We're able to add candidates as we need. I'll talk about that in a second. We're able to, again, to have different views on these things depending on how you want to plan. We're able to open and close this. We're able to do this in terms of hours, percentage FTE, and we're able to delegate and do other tasks like this as well. So again, I know that I'm glossing over a lot of these widgets, any one of which might be interesting, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to keep rolling forward and hope that people get back to me with specific questions. So if I instead want to take a look at, let's see, if I come down and I want to look at solution architect, and I want to find resources by best match, please select OnePlan, sorry. I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at this Contoso engineering, and I'm going to say find resources by best match. I'm going to get a suggested list of resources that I can use in this particular project. Now, you can see that we've got a lot of different ways of looking at this stuff and finding these. In every organization, there will be a favored process. We know this, but we have the flexibility to support you is really what this comes down to. So in this scenario, the thing that I want to emphasize is not only are we able to look at this as a resource capacity planning exercise, we're able to add resources, swap resources, move them around depending on what you need to do in terms of depending on what your process is. Okay. So the modeler, at this point, I would hope that everybody has kind of recognized and thought through, hey, you know, if we're able to add all of these various things to these projects and to our demand pool, how do we keep them all straight? I mean, you know, I've made this model. What do I do with it once I've made it? Does it get published? Does it become what our actual plan? Do I store it as a draft? The key to this is, yes, OnePlan enables you to build effectively an unlimited number of models based on whatever assumptions it is that you want. You're able to see it in terms of a Gantt chart, of course, You're able to see this in terms of resource plans, pivot charts. It goes on and on. You're able to save both models and scenarios within those models. And within that, you then say, if you stay selecting on the scenario active work, I'm able to take a look and say, okay, what does this mean? In this particular scenario, we've decided that we cannot pursue these opportunities due to these resource constraints. You're able to make changes to this model, store it, come back to it, do exactly what you wish to with it. Now, where this usually comes into play is in two different ways. One, you are a resource capacity planner, and it is your constant job, multiple times a day, to answer the question, what if we close this deal? What is the impact of this deal? The second way, and this maybe is just as important, you have an executive and or some senior staff member who refuses to understand why certain things can't be done or why hiring needs to be made. In both cases, you're able to construct models on the side. They're visual, they're easy to understand, they're manipulatable in real time. You're able to sit in a meeting and explain, this is what's actually happening. These are the what ifs that can be supported. These are the outcomes that you will get. And these are the conditions that you expect. I'm not going to save this. So from an account perspective, and this is important as well, OnePlan supplies a large number of dashboards across many different types. You can see that there's a ton of eye candy associated with them, but they are yours to manipulate and to change as you see fit. They are available out of the box. These, of course, are all exportable, which I think is a key component as well. And in the end, as you can see, we're able to look at this both from a portfolio standpoint, financial standpoint, planning standpoint. The key is to understand that all of this information is available out of OnePlan. Yes, Power BI reports are out of the box, but if you have another reporting tool, the same information is available to you to use and to build as you see fit. Okay. So one thing I want to touch on before we're done is the third kind of planning that we support. Let me come back to this, come back to our account summary, drill down, and take a look at financials. The third kind of planning that you see people undertake, and this is very important, is what we call financial planning. This is taking the cost or the revenue or both. You can do two different threads, and I'll show that in a second, and saying we are going to build our vision of the future around these cost or revenue categories. And that is going to supply what we optimize on or what I want to see in the end. Now, usually people ask questions at this point like, well, can we build a resource capacity plan, calculate the resources from that plan and create the financial plan? And the answer is yes. Can we contrast what we thought was the financial plan with what actually happened, or with what was actually invoiced, or with what we planned in terms of resource capacity planning? The answer to that is yes as well. And again, I want to kind of highlight that at this point, it should be obvious this is a very powerful tool for making sure that the sources of friction in organizations and the areas for optimization are supported by OnePlan's integrated planning function. Summary and next steps. In summary, I'd like to say OnePlan adds next-gen services delivery capabilities to traditional PSA. Accurate and timely information is critical. I think that maybe the more important points of this, although certainly if you're not in compliance with regulatory reporting, you're in trouble. Real-time visibility and modeling and adaptive project management, along with OnePlan's highly adaptable integration across your existing set of systems, are really the key points when you consider looking at a services delivery optimization tool. Each one of these areas, I think, get much shorter shrift than they should. It is, of course, critical and important to be able to track revenue against forecast and to control that and to ensure that you have high utilization. I think those are table stakes. But being able to really go after these and optimize them and not disrupt the way people are working and to a huge extent, very important to any organization considering doing this. OnePlan is a great company, consistently recognized as a market leader. We have many happy clients. And if anybody is interested in knowing more about this, please get a hold of me. I wanted to circle back and say, yes, we have free trials. We have free trials of many different kinds. This particular webinar has been focused on professional services automation or delivery services improvement, but there are many out-of-the-box mechanisms. You will get a set of, you will get data with this, you will get a preliminary configuration. And so there is really no need to call consulting. We're happy to supply consulting, and then generally I think you will benefit from consulting, but it's not required, certainly not required to continue an investigation of OnePlan. And that's it. Thank you. I would like to say I appreciate very much everybody continuing to attend. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. And again, I'm happy to do a custom demo if that makes more sense. I'm happy to just drill down for 10 minutes on any particular feature that you might have had. Thanks again, and I hope you consider coming to our additional webinars.